The following is a production of Notch 6 Media.
It's the Notch 6 online podcast, also known as the Notch 6 Christmas Spectacular. In this episode, we bring you a great holiday story on how Lionel keeps its holiday layouts running in New York City for almost 2 months straight, and a jolly old elf from a place called Concord, North Carolina stops by to tell us about a little holiday project that he's just finished up and that should be arriving under Christmas trees very, very, very soon. Plus, it wouldn't be the Notch 6 Christmas Spectacular without a little surprise at the end. It's all ahead on this very special Christmas edition of Notch 6.
This is the Notch 6 online podcast. Notch 6 is the podcast dedicated to O-Gauge trains. Whether you're collecting, operating, or just getting started, Notch 6 is your home for O-Gauge news, events, and interviews. Now here is your host, Derek Thomas.
Well, welcome in for this Christmas Spectacular, the second one we've ever done in the history of Notch 6. Hey, I figure since we got past the first one, we might as well do a second one. My name is Derek Thomas, and if this is your first time listening to this show, well, welcome in. You picked a great show to jump off with. This is the podcast dedicated to O-Gauge trains, not HO, not N-scale, not Z-scale. We focus on the big trains that do cool things. And so whether you're just getting started, whether you've been at this a long time, this is the show for you, and we're so happy that you're here with us. I am just excited that it's Christmas. It's really only a couple of weeks until Christmas when the show is going to come out. And this show has kind of become my benchmark for getting into holiday mode every year. Thanksgiving has gone by, and this time of year is normally really, really busy for me anyway, just working on wrapping up end of the year projects, looking ahead to the following year. And when I sit down and I finally put this show together, it's like, okay, it can be the holidays now. And so happy to sit down, put the show together, and share with you guys another round of Christmas fun. You know, the reality is with Toy Trains and Christmas is that we own this time of year. This is the one time of year where it's okay to let your geek flag fly, so to speak, and just be really proud of your toy train layout and show it off. We show ours off at a Christmas party that we host every year. I know many folks are having friends in for the holidays, family in, and this is the time of year, and we own it, and we're proud of that. So, like I said, let your geek flag fly here for a few more weeks, and then we'll kind of quiet down and go back into the shadows of being closet model railroaders for the next 11 months. Anyway, a couple things to just talk about real quick before we get into the show. There's a lot of ground to cover today, and two special people are going to be here. Bill Wander from Lionel, who's Lionel's field marketing manager, is our main interview today. And he'll be talking about what it takes to maintain, get ready, move into position Lionel's 3 holiday layouts in the New York City area. Many of you folks are already familiar with these layouts, so it's going to be fun to hear from Bill and find out exactly what it takes to make these things operate for almost 2 months straight. So that'll be the main show today. Mike Reagan from Lionel will also be stopping by to spread some Christmas cheer as he did last year, and wouldn't be a Christmas episode without Mike Reagan, so Mike will be here a little bit later in the show as well. Before we get into Bill and his interview, I want to give you guys a quick reminder about the Madison Poster Company Holiday Bundle. The website where you need to go to order this is www.madisonposter.com. We are including our D145 dealer display mural, an exclusive 11 by 14 Angela Trotta Thomas print featuring our display mural. And we're also including a custom LCCA billboard with Angela's artwork on one side and our artwork on the other. 2 packages available. One of them is $99, and that's the normal price of the small poster. The other one is $199 for the large poster, and that's the normal price of the large poster. So we're giving you free gifts, basically, almost $75 of free merchandise for the cost of a normal poster. Plus, we're going to throw in free domestic ground shipping to kind of cap it all off. It's our way of saying thank you for a great first year at the Madison Poster Company. A few notes that I need to let you know about. You need to order by December 18th in order for us to guarantee that these bundles will get to you by Christmas Eve. We are going to offer this package through January 5th, so if you're listening to this after Christmas and you're going, well, shoot, I really didn't get anything I wanted, go ahead, hop over to madisonposter.com. We'll carry the packages through January 5th. And so we'll give you guys a little bit of extra time to order for those of you who didn't exactly get what you wanted. One final note about the poster company. It was a great first year, like we said. It was so good that we are going to do a year 2, it sounds like. We are very close to finalizing details on that. That being said, that means it's time to retire the first poster. So the plan is, and it's not set in stone, but the D145 poster that we've had for the last year will disappear here more than likely around the middle of February. So if you've kind of been on the fence, you like the artwork, and you haven't ordered one yet or haven't made up your mind, it's time to start making up your mind, because once we retire this, it's retired, and I highly, highly doubt it's coming back anytime soon. I was serious about this when we started this project, that number one, we weren't going to overproduce posters and blow them out at the end of the year. That still holds true. The people that have big posters have big posters. There's not any of them running around in our stock, and same basically goes for the little ones. So the people that have them or the people that want them need to get moving on that. And like I said, we will discontinue that image and retire it probably sometime in February. We'll just see what happens. Again, the website, madisonposter.com, and that's the last thing I'm going to say about Christmas holiday bundles. Other than that, as again, right before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the show, as I like to call it, just so happy that it's Christmas time. I've seen a lot of great pictures over on the O-Gauge Railroading Forum, also on the LCCA Facebook page, of some great holiday layouts, and just in the mood to celebrate Christmas. For me, as a Christian, celebrating the birth of our Savior is just a magical time of year for us and our family. And celebrating this year with our firstborn son, who is now, going to be 7.5, almost 8 months when the time Christmas gets here. It's just incredible. And again, it's great to have you guys along for the ride, have you guys listening, and get to share a story with you guys of something that I find really fascinating about how these holiday layouts that entertain so many thousands of people every year, and the work that goes into maintaining these layouts. And so now it's time for me to get out of the way, and we're going to get this story rolling. This is Bill Wander. He is Lionel's field marketing manager, and as you will find out, he has a very interesting story about how he got to his current position in Lionel and exactly what it takes to make these layouts run. It's part 1 of the Notch 6 Christmas Spectacular, Bill Wander, and making the Lionel holiday layouts a success.
This is Notch 6, your first source for breaking news and in-depth interviews in the world of O-Gauge.
Well, welcome back to the Notch 6 Christmas Spectacular, and every year, considering this is the second year, I try to outdo myself, which after Mike Reagan reciting The Night Before Christmas, O-Gauge style last year, it's going to be hard to top. But we're going to bring you a great story today, one that I think that a lot of you will find very interesting. With me for this episode, Bill Wander, who is the field marketing manager for Lionel. Bill, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me here. I may actually end up reciting Christmas in the workhouse, but that always keeps them up at night.
Well, I am so excited to have you here, and this is a really interesting job and a job title that you have that I think a lot of people are familiar with. A lot of the Lionel holiday displays in New York City. There's 3 of them to be exact: Macy's, FAO Schwarz, and Grand Central Terminal. And you are the man that is basically behind the curtain in the Land of Oz, making sure the whole thing doesn't go up in smoke. Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Well, it's not so much smoke as grinding to a halt, because nobody wants to see a train that's not running.
So you get the task of making sure everything runs smoothly during the holidays. But before we jump into that aspect of the story, I want to ask you how you got involved with model trains, and then how eventually you found your way into Lionel. How did you even get started with toy trains?
Well, there is a picture of me that I'm keeping away from management at my second Christmas when I'm 18 months old. And there's my Lionel 1615 behind me. So I grew up with Lionel trains. I had my 1615, which was brand new, but I was also running a 1666, which had been my father's and my uncle's, and that was bought in 1938, and it was still running nicely with the last time I saw it sometime in the 1970s.
Okay, so it was a family thing then?
It was a family thing, yeah. we didn't call it a layout. We had a train table was what we had, and it was basically plywood central. And I had a double dog bone with 027 track and a freight yard with 3 dead-headed rails down there. And what my father got me to do by the time I was 8 or 9 was I wasn't allowed to pick up the cars and put them on the track. I had to assemble it with the switcher and then hook them up. Now, I didn't always get them in the right order, and there were an awful lot of train wrecks and derailments, and it did wonders for hand-eye coordination when I got around to driving.
So your father had you kicking cars on your own layout at 10 years old. That's a new one for me.
Well, like I said, it did a whole lot for my hand-eye coordination. We, moved out of the house when I went into college, and the trains were sold, and I was away from it for a long time. And about the year 2000, I was on a job with a cameraman who was a collector. We were driving someplace. So we were back in the back of a van on our way to a job. And I looked at him and said, I didn't realize Lionel was still in business. How many times have we heard that since then? And he
Sure.
said, yeah, they're still in business. They still make trains, and they still make parts for them. And I got intrigued. It was at that point that I realized that I would never have the time, space, wherewithal to restore cars, which had always fascinated me. And I got into buying junkers, post-war stuff, and bringing them back to life with $20 worth of parts, a box of Q-tips, and some mineral spirits. And there was something very satisfying about working with your hands and bringing something back to life that was a 60-year-old toy, as good as it was the day it came out of the factory.
Sure, absolutely, and that's a really familiar story to a lot of guys who listen to this program. Is you'll see a lot of guys on the show on their hands and knees diving under the tables looking for something to bring back from the dead, and I think there's a lot to be said for the satisfaction that comes from that.
Yeah, and it's not new, but it's working just fine.
So now, how did you kind of meander from, okay, I'm back in, I'm doing, I guess restorations or resurrections, depending on what you want to call it, to suddenly here you are with a job with Lionel? What happened between point A and point B that got you there?
Well, it wasn't very sudden. It was a slow, gradual drip, drip, drip. My wife knew the person who was managing the Lionel pop-up store in 2009, and they were at a party together, and my wife mentioned to her that, oh, my husband knows something about trains, and they dove at me like, does he want a job? And my wife came home and asked me, would I consider working in the pop-up store? And I was like, yeah, okay, I can do that. I think I can deal with the general public, but the last time I had done any kind of retail business was before barcodes, so... there I was. We had a pop-up store in Rockefeller Center. And we had one guy who knew the newer stuff, the legacy stuff, and that was Tom Nelson, and he knew his way around it. I basically knew what was in the box, and all I would do was explain to people what was in the box. They light up, they smoke, they whistle, they go forwards, and they go backwards. And it was a successful year for Lionel there. We sold a lot of train sets. They did a second pop-up store. And again, it was wintertime. I figured, okay, I'll try this again. And at that pop-up store, I was actually proud of the fact. The first year, I sold the most ready-to-run sets of anybody in the store. The second year, I didn't. And I was proud of that fact because I taught 3 people whose first language was not English how to sell trains. And we sold a lot of trains to people who got up that morning with no clue they were going home with a train set.
Very cool. So clearly there's a market outside of just the traditional folks that you think are train people, correct?
The door would be thrown open every single day, and somebody would say, I didn't know the company was still in business. And then you'd have to hear, and they don't make them like they used to. Well, they don't make a Chevy the way they used to either. And then I'd hear, well, they're all plastic. And I'd hand somebody the Polar Express, and it would get their attention because it's not all plastic. And it just explaining what it is, showing them, and, Business 101, written by Joshua Lionel Cowan, running trains, sell trains. It's just that simple. You can't just sit there and expect people to pluck them off the shelf and bring them up to the register.
Right.
Run them.
Absolutely. And the trains, once you put them on the track, they basically sell themselves.
Just about.
Let's go ahead and let's kind of transition into these layouts. Lionel, as we mentioned at the top, keeps 3 operating layouts continually in New York City during the holiday season. Kind of recap the locations of where these layouts are, and can you kind of give me approximate sizes just so the audience kind of has a feel for how big each layout is?
Well, the Grand Central one comes in November, and it gets shipped in 6 crates, and that is 10 by 30 feet. And we've got 9 trains running on that right now. I'm trying to remember the Macy's size. The Macy's is more compact, but I've got 11 trains running there between that and what we call the baggage cart that has 2 loops on it. You get to see that as you go in to see Santa, and it keeps you amused because you come past it 3 times while you're snaking around on the line. So you get to see something different, a different view, a different part of it each time. Up at FAO Schwarz, up by Central Park, we've got 3 trains running. We've got a circle on the top, we've got a longer oval, and then we've got an even longer oval on that. And up to now, they've been running traditionally with a push of the button, and the trains come on, provided they're on the track and somebody hasn't put their fingers in there. And they run for a few minutes, and then the timer shuts them down, and they cool off, and they start again. Now we've got Lion Chief on 2 of those 3 tracks, and we've got the remotes out where the public can touch them. So now they can actually run the train. So those are the 3 main ones. This year, we've put one of our towers that you may have seen at York or one of our World's Greatest Hobby shows. We've got that in Macy's, and we've got demonstrators. I've got 4 trains on that right now. I've got the Peanuts Christmas, which is a traditional Transformer set. Under that, we've got a Pennsylvania Flyer, which is a Lion Chief set, and there's a remote for that, and you can run it forwards, backwards, and the little guys try to run it off the rails, and now and then they're successful. After that, we've got our Silver Bell set, which will throw everybody for a loop when we push the button on that, and it starts playing Christmas carols. And finally, we've got our ever-popular Polar Express running there. We've actually added, we have a single circle running under a tree up at the New York Historical Society, which is a little classier than some of our other places. And the reason for that is the New York Historical Society has been given a huge collection of toy trains, and they are showing them at the New York Historical Society. So the gift shop decided that they needed some trains to sell, and the people who make running trains are Lionel. So we have a Polar Express 10th anniversary set up there, and actually they are the only place besides a dealer in New York City that's selling the 10th anniversary set.
Okay. So Lionel is visible in a lot of different locations in New York City during the holidays.
Well, not only those places, but on the back of some Metro cards, it will direct you to Lionel at Grand Central Terminal. They tell me...
Oh, really?
Yes. I haven't been outside a whole lot in the past few weeks, but they tell me we've got spots running up on the Jumbotron in New York every hour.
Wow, that's a big step, especially in such a high foot traffic area to have that kind of visibility in New York City during the holidays is pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
Very, very cool.
And that's all due to the new team at Lionel that's actually interested in selling trains and making people aware of those trains.
Absolutely, and I think that has been one of the cries from the traditional hobbyists for years is how are we going to reach a new generation with the magic of toy trains? And not only is it just letting people touch, feel, see, run these trains, it's making them aware that they even still exist. And clearly there's a team here at Lionel that feels that we've got to do something different to get the Lionel logo and Lionel trains in front of the eyes of all these people. And it seems like New York is kind of the launching pad for that next generation of toy train enthusiasts.
Well, it was the launching pad for the first generation of electric toy train enthusiasts because New York is where Lionel was born.
Long before these layouts ever come into public view every holiday season, the planning season starts long before that. Tell me what the initial planning looks like every year for these layouts, kind of the checklist that you have to go through and what it takes to get these layouts show ready.
Well, not all of them. The FAO Schwarz one is there year round.
Okay.
And we have a guy by the name of Frank Mullen who has layout refinements, and he was recommended to us by Roger Farkash, who built these layouts. And we'll come in and do an overnight in FAO Schwartz because that's the only time you can work. And Frank will transform spring, summer, and fall into winter. And he'll do that in an overnight. And this year we did it a Saturday night into Sunday morning. And it's absolutely magical to watch him work, to take out the convertibles and put in hardtop cars, to take the people out in their shirt sleeves and put them in winter coats. He's not doing that, he's just changing the people out. And have the snow on the mountain creep down a little lower, and snow appears on the roofs of the buildings, and snow appears along the right-of-way on the train tracks.
So what goes into the planning for the other layouts then?
Well, the other layouts, the Macy's one is actually mothballed 11 months of the year. So when Santa makes his rounds on Christmas Eve, that's the end of the display and open to the public. What ends up happening there is they close it up. And I only get an hour a day to service it, and that's the hour before Santa gets there because the manager gets in there. Let's say Santa gets in at 9. The manager will get there about 7:45, turn on the lights. The elves are getting ready to guide you around the place, but I have to get in there, and if the track needs cleaning, the track needs cleaning. If something's become derailed, it's got to be put back on there. And, or sometimes if you've got an engine failure, you put another one in there. But you've got to be out of there by the time they open to the public. And there's nothing worse than turning everything on and discovering that you forgot to throw the lock on to turn off the E-unit, and your Christmas special is running backwards for the day. Or that you've forgotten to turn the smoke unit off, and there's no smoke fluid in there, and you see that little wisp coming out, and you know you're going to have to quickly shut it off for the day because you don't want it running for 12 hours with no fluid in it. The thing is, we discovered that I went and I asked, I said, this thing is mothballed. What does it take to get in there in September and start preparing it? And I was given the unbelievable answer of just ask. So I begin working in there in September, and that will be cleaning the rails, every last little bit of it, because some of it's inaccessible without a track cleaning car during the season. But I'm in there polishing that track. Some of it doesn't look dirty, but what happens, it seems to get a little bit tarnished. And that tarnish will stop the conductivity on something like our trolley that's bumping back and forth. And I was looking at absolutely clean rails and no trolley running, and it just wouldn't run. I could take that trolley off and put it on the regular train tracks, but it wouldn't run on the trolley track. And I tested, and there was electricity. Everything was right. And then I took a microfiber cloth and I polished the top of the rails and the side of the rails that had become tarnished. And the thing runs like magic right now.
Okay.
So you start preparing, and it's odd. I'm the guy that's out buying Christmas lights in September. Why? Because my lights on my tree have burned out. And I made a conscious decision. I could get LEDs, which would last forever on that tree. But I've gone with the traditional incandescents because if I've got LEDs up there, they are so intense that if you try and take a picture, all you're going to get is the lights. You won't see the trains. So yes, those incandescents burn out, and sometimes they're in series and the whole thing will go out over one bulb. But I'd rather have people come away with a photograph seeing the trains than just little hot spots where the lights are.
So the Macy's layout being mothballed, Grand Central comes into you from crates from Roger and his crew in Dallas. So
it came in this year. It now lives down in North Carolina in our warehouse.
Okay.
But we did a major, Roger Farkash and George Watson and Roy McClellan did a major overhaul on our electrics on that this year, and it has made running that a dream because we used to run that on 6 ZWs, post-war 275-watt ZWs. And let me put it this way, that it's turned on by the people at the Transit Museum. And sometimes things would get bumped, so the lights were running at 18 volts. Sometimes there wasn't enough oomph to get the elevated line going around the curves. So what they did this year was they swapped out those, beautiful old dinosaur ZWs, and every track, every train has now got a dedicated CW80 running it.
Okay.
It's made a difference with some of the electronics. Some of the electronics didn't like the clean voltage that they were getting out of the ZW. Some of the relays didn't like that. It's absolutely a dream to know that each one is on a single transformer. So if I've got something that's jumped the track, I know which one's flashing. I know how to find that transformer without having to think, because all of the stuff is under it. And I spend a lot of time on my hands and knees.
Very true. If you've ever seen the underside of one of these layouts, and I had the privilege of crawling under one of them this summer in Indianapolis, but there's a lot of wire and there's a lot of ground to cover and there's not a lot of room to move. And so you get my applause for being able to navigate under there, and you do it quite a bit for these couple of months.
I do, and the one at Macy's has even less clearance under it, because the Macy's display is not built for you and me. The Macy's display is built for the guys coming in to see Santa. And they're a little bit shorter, not a lot, but a little bit shorter than me. So it is not 28 inches off the ground. It's less. So when I've got to get under that, and a lot of people don't realize that Roger has 5 trains running on that Christmas tree in the center of it. And that Christmas tree isn't a Christmas tree. It's angle iron, and it's angle iron with branches wired onto it and lights wired onto that. The way I service 4 out of 5 of them is inside that tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us who've seen pictures have seen pictures of the tree. I mean, it's a tree with concentric rings going all the way up it, and multiple trains on multiple levels, and it's an incredible display, but I had no idea there was actually room to get inside that thing.
There isn't.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't stop me. No, there actually is room to get inside of that thing, and then reach through and make sure that you don't get the branches so far out that they're not knocking the trains off, which happened to me the other day. That's not a lot of fun. Make sure you're not bouncing the ornaments off it, which happens from time to time. And there was one day when I was there that hour before it was open, and they had a special viewing, and they hadn't told me about it. So I was completely in the tree, and there's 4 or 5 kids working their way through, and I hear, "Hey, there's somebody in the tree." And it's like, do I stop moving and hope they don't see me, or do I drop to the floor, or do I just continue what I was doing?
Santa's elf got stuck inside the tree.
Yes, yeah.
I can only imagine the conversation that was taking place outside of the plexiglass when that was all happening.
Yeah.
Okay, now something that I want to talk to you about, because I think this is one of the most interesting parts of the whole thing, is these layouts, well, except for FAO, aren't up year-round. These layouts have to get from point A to point B, set up inside of Grand Central Terminal, inside of Macy's, and in some odd hours. You've got to tell me about how do these layouts get set up, and some of the trials and tribulations that come along with that job.
Well, let's go with Grand Central. Grand Central is packed into 6 crates, and it all fits in those 6 crates. And those 6 crates fit in a 24-foot box truck perfectly, because Roger built the template, built the model to try them out. Roger Farkash does not do things by trial and error. It's all worked out before you take off. So in comes the 24-foot box truck, and you say, well, why not a bigger truck? Because Grand Central was built in 1913, and the freight entrance in Grand Central was built for small trucks because there were no 55-foot trucks at the time. So that truck will arrive, and we will unload it at 8 o'clock. That's 8 p.m. because we can't roll these crates, in essence, 2.5 city blocks across the floor of Grand Central's main room while people are running for trains. So after rush hour, we start wheeling these things off. Now, let's say this year they came on Monday, on a Monday, and I think it was, let me see my calendar, that was the 10th of November. they arrive there. So we roll them in at 8 o'clock, and we roll them to the entrance of the Transit Museum. And as I say, from the difference from the freight elevator to the Transit Museum is probably 2.5 blocks. And we park them there overnight. Next morning at 8 o'clock, we start unpacking, we start building. And it can be an 18-hour day. And that's going to be Roger Farkash, who's overseeing the whole thing, George Watson, is our wiring wizard. And George will make sure it's all wired, it's all patched, the lights are lit, and what we need is there. Then we have Paul Seabridge. Paul Seabridge is someone that we hire on a day basis, and Paul is the tall guy that can reach up and get stuff plugged in, and he can set up the model of the Empire State Building. And Paul also works with Frank Mullen, who does the decorating up at Grand Central, at FAO Schwartz. And Paul is that mix of strength, height, and the aesthetics, the artists in him to place the people just so. We have a couple of volunteers who come along and, spend a couple of hours. They won't spend the whole day there. But by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, it's all together. The glass is going up. We have troubleshot whatever needs to be troubleshot. And then they come back the next day. In this case, it was Wednesday. We set the entire thing up on Veterans Day, the 11th. The museum shop stays open. It's curtained off, but there are constantly people, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. And those crates are out in the hallway there. But there's buildings fit inside of buildings. Everything in that fits just so. And it travels in a remarkable way that doesn't damage too much. We'll end up, putting a couple of bushes where some of the foam mountains have been dinged. And this year, as I said, we've rewired the thing so it is running a lot smoother. The lights are lit brighter because they're now being powered directly from transformers, and the transformers, interestingly enough, Roy has put a screw in the side of them, so you don't get a full 18 volts if they get thrown open. It comes up to just 14, so we're not burning out lights all the time on it. And it's methodical. There's a way of doing it. It's all modular. It all fits together, and it's ready to go by usually that Saturday, Sunday is when they have a grand opening or a private opening for people within the transit authority.
Very neat. So once these layouts get set up and go into place, the work really doesn't stop there. In fact, it's just beginning. You get the daily routine of making sure everything runs smoothly. And you kind of alluded to some of the work that gets done at Macy's on a daily basis. Kind of walk me through what a typical day during the holiday season looks like for you and what all has to be accomplished during a normal day.
Well, like I said, I have an hour before Santa gets there. Now, this week Santa is getting there at 9, so I have to be at Macy's at 8. The actual week before Christmas and just up to Christmas Eve, Santa gets there at 7. So I have to be there at 6. From there, my day is troubleshoot. And sometimes you walk in and everything's fine. And there have been times when there's one part we call it the baggage cart. There's an oval and there's a figure 8. And one year, the 90-degree crossing was so worn that the train would bump off, and it would be miraculous. I'd have it running just right, and I could walk out the door and it'd fly off the track. And it was finally a question of I had to get in there. Now, getting in there to clean it right now is accomplished by 2 hatches that you don't quite fit through. So you can get one eye and an arm in there to clean if you're not using some sort of track cleaning car. And there's a plexiglass top, but it's a 3-man job to take it off. So that usually doesn't get open during the season unless it's a real crisis. And once we replaced that 90-degree crossing, it ran very smoothly. This year, I begged for new trains, and I got new trains because we've had some stuff that's been running there for quite a few years. So that's my day there. There's always track to be cleaned. If everything's running fine, I'll pop open a section and just clean some track. And in a perfect day, the trains are still on the track. The track is reasonably clean, and then I move on. My next stop, well, this year we've added the 4-train or the 4-track tower in the sales department of Macy's because we are selling trains in Macy's this year, and we're selling them. We have a Lionel demonstrator there a couple of days a week. And they come in on the weekends, and they will hand you the remote, and you can run that remote on that tower. Now, the tower isn't enclosed in plexiglass, so you can't knock them off the rails or run away with the train. But it's the first time in years that we've been selling trains in Macy's again. So there's a sales floor. There's a toy department. You can pick up a Lionel train. You can pick up a Lionel ornament. You can buy O-scale with a transformer. You can buy O-scale that's Lion Chief. You can buy a G-scale set. You can buy the Lionel teddy bears. They're all up there. It's on the 8th floor at Macy's. So I got to check those to see if someone hasn't run them off the rails and to see if the thing's running all right, and there's always track to clean. So from there, what I do is I buy a 7-day subway pass, and that will let me on as many times as I need to be. My next stop is usually Grand Central, because Grand Central is open, and it's a little easier early in the morning when it's not crowded to be working on this thing. And like I say, there's always track to clean. Now and then we'll get something a little stubborn, and it's got to be encouraged. Now and then an E-unit will call it quits, and I've got a couple of them, and I will replace them. The new modular ones plug right in. There's always something to do. And I will be wearing some kind of Lionel logo, be it a hat or a Lionel apron or a Lionel shirt, so that I'm identified as I am the guy that's allowed to have his hands inside the layout. That makes it a little difficult to get out of there because everybody wants to talk to the train guy. Everybody's got a story. Everybody wants to know this, that, and the other thing. Mm-hmm. And all the time, I mean, there was a time we had a series of crossed wires this year after we set it up, and it had to be troubleshot. And I spent 5 hours one day. I said I wasn't leaving till we got it fixed, and we got it fixed. But it took me going under the layout, taking a photograph of the wires. The problem with the Transit Museum is cell phone service in the Transit Museum is the same as it was in 1913, non-existent. Then I have to go into the main room in order to get some sort of cell phone service. Then I would text that picture or the information down to Roy McClellan down in Roger's shop at TW Design in Dallas. And then he would say, go back and try this. And I'd go back under there. And the sweat's pouring down your face. I'm lying on my back in the museum under the table. And I come out and somebody's got a question. And you got to remember to keep the smile on your face, because those are the guys who are really interested, and they don't really care why I'm under there. And, you know, that I'm out of breath, I'm cross-eyed, and I can't see my fingerprints for the grease anymore.
It's still a show.
But then again, here's the other side of it. How many people do you know that can say, I keep the trains running at Grand Central?
That's true. And that's the cool thing about your job is you really do keep the show running when no one else is around. The flip side of that is there are some sides of it that are not so glamorous, but clearly it's something you still enjoy at the end of the day. Otherwise,
and I have the bumps on my head to prove it.
I bet. So after Grand Central and you make sure everything's good over there, then do you get a chance to go check out FAO and make sure everything's square over there before you kind of wrap it up?
That's my next stop, and we'll go up there and make sure the track's clean, make sure there's product on the shelf, put stuff back on the rails because it's an open plexiglass layout, and people just love to push the trains. You'll also find out that there's been something added from time to time. You'll find a stuffed dinosaur sitting in the middle of the layout, or a boat sometimes, and you got to return that to whatever department it belongs to. And then there's some times when I have to turn around and go back down to Macy's or back down to Grand Central because I've got a spare part or a spare something or other. I carry a tool bag. I carry another bag with me with miscellaneous whatever, the tools I need, the oil I need, the grease I need, the spare tires, traction tires for the subway set that tends to eat them up. And sometimes the spare that you've got has to be borrowed from one place and go back to the other one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the rumor mill has it that Lionel has opened a new East Coast service department, and you may have something to do with that. Where is the East Coast service department located for Lionel during the holidays?
Well, it's the stealth service department, but it's in my basement and my test track and my CW80 down there. And, my spare parts or stuff that's been cannibalized to make a Frankentrain, keep the thing still running. This year, we got to Grand Central. Well, actually before we got to Grand Central, a couple of days before the stuff was ready to get on the truck from its renovation and get shipped up here, we discovered we didn't have any trains. The trains that we had from previous years, and some of them have been modified to run on DC to make some of the tricky stuff go on, somehow got lost in the shuffle of the move when Lionel closed in New York down to North Carolina. We didn't have any trains. And it was like, uh-oh. So the people in North Carolina, and I am up here saying I'm going to have this great display with no trains on it. The people in North Carolina, the service people, the sales people, Lauren Morris, who is our new manager of the special events, snapped in, and got me trains. We don't have any subway trains in production right now, and we managed to find an R16 within inventory that I've got running up on the elevated line. And the elevated line is the star of the show. It's just at eye level, and it's kind of spectacular with the subway running up there. And here I am, the guy in the field. I'm, close to 900 miles away from headquarters, and everybody, including Mike Reagan, who's pulling his hair out over the big boy schedule, everybody snapped in, and got me what I needed.
I want to kind of start wrapping this thing up. One of the things that I want to talk to you about, and I think our listeners will find interesting, you kind of mentioned your tool bag that goes with you. For these layouts that are running these incredible lengths of time, and we have listeners that put on their own holiday displays that don't see near as much running time, but still see some significant running time. What kind of grease, what kind of oil are you using? What kind of tips can you give our listeners about how can we kind of help take the wear and tear off of these trains, even though they're going to see significant running time? What would you suggest?
Well, out of the box, I lube them, and I lube them with a light Labelle oil. I hit all the moving parts. When it comes to grease, I use, and this is not everybody's cup of tea, but I use Red and Tacky, which is an automotive grease.
Yep, and Lucas.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So I carry that around in a tiny little jam jar, the kind that you get in a hotel. And I got to remember to keep an eye on it because here's this red stuff in a jam jar with a toothpick in it, and if I leave it there, somebody's going to taste it.
And that wouldn't be pleasant.
No. For track cleaning, there's several things. There's denatured alcohol, which has been the tried and true favorite. Mike Reagan is now recommending that you use one of the citrus products, be that Gugon or Citrusolve. What I found on that is you've got to make sure you have wiped it clean because that will eat, in this kind of running, traction tires. What else do I use for track cleaning? I use the old Lionel eraser, and that will get some of the grubby spots off it. What I've also, the green Scotch-Brite pad, that works nice on the stubborn stuff. What I found that is really easy to use is I pick up these microfiber towels, and they are rough enough. They polish up the track, particularly when I have to do the sides of them, like I mentioned with the trolley at Macy's, that you can grab the thing in your fingers and scrub with the thing. It doesn't make a mess. It takes some elbow grease, but it's giving me remarkable results on some pretty grubby track. That's the basic stuff in the toolkit. One of my other gimmicks is I buy little tiny black hair rubber bands meant for ponytails and such. And when we get a coupler that just gets balky and the train is perfectly good and the spring is shot in the thing, I'll just seal that coupler shut with this black rubber band and you won't see that. There's a magnet The magnet, right now I'm looking for a short on some tracks, or just finished looking for short on some tracks, and I could not find it in Macy's. So I dragged the magnet over it, and I found there was a hook from a Christmas ornament shorting the track out. Oh, and there's gloves. I carry those blue gloves, those blue surgical gloves, and no matter what I do, no matter how much I wear it, my fingers are still black from cleaning track and picking up carbony trains, even with the glove on. And the gimmick on that is cheap dollar store shampoo, which gets grease out of anything and smells nice.
Well, there you go. So really, you don't carry anything that is super specialized or unusual. I mean, these are really common items that you don't need to have anything special to take care of these monster layouts that see this incredible running time.
I can't think of anything that's really super specialized in there. We'll make gimmicky tools for specific things from time to time, like the cleaning stick that Rogers guys made for me for getting those unreachable portions of track on at Grand Central. There's a grabber tool that I have up there for those places that you just can't get your arms in, or at least my short arms into.
It's neat to hear this entire story finally from you, and you start to realize, the amount of work that goes into this, the fact that it's, you are working really for 2 months straight in some really unusual hours, unusual places, and in unusual situations to keep these trains running and keep the show going for the holiday season in New York City.
As twitchy as it gets, when you're sitting there trying to put something on the track and you get some junior engineer who wants to tell you what's wrong, they do appreciate what you're doing. They do get it. So it's like you have to remind yourself that, these are your customers, these are your fans, and they really appreciate it. They may not understand, but the fact that they're engaged is part of it.
Absolutely. Wouldn't be a Christmas show if I didn't ask you 2 questions to wrap this thing up. For you personally, what's your favorite part of the holiday season?
Good question. It's got to be the tree, because my wife insists on a live tree, which I'm all for, because I like she buys a tree based on its scent. So getting the tree and getting that thing in is it. Now, my wife will want to buy any tree that was rejected by Rockefeller Center for being too big. That's the one she wants.
I'm going to guess you either have a big house or a big yard.
I don't. We cut off an awful lot on the bottom of it, and I keep saying it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit. And she's usually right. It does fit, but there we go.
Final question. What is Santa bringing Bill Wander this year? Hopefully.
I don't know if I've been good enough. There's being good and there's being good enough. I don't even know if I've been good enough.
In an ideal world, what would be waiting for you under the tree Christmas morning?
My original 1615, but that has gone long into the Easter.
Yeah, I tell you what. Now, did you ever replace it? I do have to ask that.
What I've actually done is I've replaced, and more so, I've replaced my 1615 with another 1615. And then I got a little obsessive with the 1666s, and I think I own every variation of them.
So more than one steam switcher hanging around the Wander house during the holidays, it sounds like. Very good. You've been listening to Bill Wander, Field Marketing Manager for Lionel, the man that keeps the holidays rolling for Lionel in New York City, and a guy who I lovingly refer to as Bill Wonder, because you pull off some pretty amazing things during the holiday. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, Bill, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you, my friend.
Been a pleasure. Merry Christmas. Keep them oiled. Keep them clean. And if they're in the attic or in the basement, get them out. They're not doing anybody any good down there, and I bet that 50-year-old train still runs just fine.
Well, welcome back to the Notch 6 Online Podcast. It wouldn't be a Christmas spectacular without a man that we're about to talk to, broadcasting from some location remotely outside of the North Pole, also known as Concord, North Carolina, via satellite phone, Mike Reagan. Mike, Merry Christmas. Welcome back. You're not sick this year, thank God.
Well, thanks, Derek. Merry Christmas to you.
It's good to hear from you. It's been a good 2014, and hard to believe 15 is less than a month away. And the good news is every year that we've kind of talked to you on this program, and we're rolling into the start of our third year, is you guys have always talked about kind of getting ahead of the game in terms of where you're at. Do you guys finally feel like you're getting there in terms of knowing what's going to happen and now looking far enough down the pipeline that you guys can get a pretty good handle on it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, catalog, the 2015 Volume 1 ready to run, and American Flyer catalogs all go off to the printer Wednesday next week, and they'll be out on the street February 1st.
I got to laugh a little bit. So one of the big pieces of news the week that we're recording this is that you guys have released a 45-minute video basically showing how to get the Vision Line Big Boy out of the box, up and running. And one of the first things that you do, you lift the lid off the box, and one of the first lines out of your mouth is, "Hey, here's the manual. Maybe you should read this because there's a lot of information in this manual that's going to tell you how to do things that none of our other trains have ever done before. You really ought to think about reading this." And you and I can only guess the number of calls that are about to come in the next 3 weeks. Well, how does it do this? Well, if you would have read the book, you'd know.
Yeah, this is true. Contrary to public opinion, we don't just put that manual in there to increase shipping weight. We actually put some pretty good information in there that tell folks how to run their trains. And unfortunately, we work with a lot of consumers who have been running trains for a good number of years, and a lot of folks think that let's be honest, they think they know it all, and then we come out with new technology that does things that they're not familiar with, and when they get frustrated, they call in and they're mad and they don't want to listen. Oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to admit, and this is a good case study. It took me about 4 or 5 days with my new Berkshire to realize that, hey, if I hold the aux1 key for 3 seconds, it arms this really cool feature that, it does.
That thing called sequence control that, I don't know, is mentioned in every product video I've made for the legacy locomotive, which is only about, 96 of them.
Well, and like I said, it's I didn't realize it was there. And truth be told, this is the first, well, not the first, but basically the first really new high-end legacy locomotive that I bought in a long, long time. And so for me, there's a lot of things on this engine that were brand new. So for me, I got to learn a bunch of new features with this Berkshire. And, it's fun. It's neat that each year we go along, we pack more and more into these trains that, we can have things like sequence control that really, lets you sit back and watch the train do its thing,
Sure.
And so it's really fun.
Just out of curiosity, have you figured out how to control the 32 different levels of smoke that your locomotive produces?
You know what? I'm just going to have you take a second. For those of you who are listening who are just as clueless as I am, let the man here explain how it works. Go right ahead.
Okay. So the Vision Line Big Boy, the Vision Line Big Boy brings in the visual aspect of the coal and water consumption for steam engines, and then the fuel consumption for diesels. So one of the things that's actually going on inside your legacy-equipped locomotive, and this is primarily your legacy-equipped locomotives that have that track IR sensor on the bottom. But what's actually happening inside your train as you run your locomotive is you are consuming, or not you are, but the locomotive is consuming fuel on a diesel and fuel and water on a steam engine. Okay, so the rate of consumption is based upon the labor that the locomotive is going through. So on a steam locomotive, you've got 3 levels of smoke, low, medium, and high, and under each level, you can manipulate the intensity of the chuffing for a steam engine. So with that effects up and effects down button that's underneath the speed bar menu, or on the touchpad when you hit the speed bar, if you press EFX down, the down arrow for EFX, all the way down, the chuff is a very light drifting chuff. And if you let the locomotive run for about, 3 minutes or so, you'll see that the smoke that comes out of the stack is pretty anemic, even though you have the smoke set on high. Then as the locomotive is running at, say, maybe speed step 18 or 22, somewhere in that neighborhood, just press the EFX up button once every 4 or 5 seconds. And each time you press that, you'll hear the intensity of the chuff increase. On the top of your legacy remote, it'll say labor increase, but in the locomotive, you will hear the chuffing getting more intense. And as that chuff gets more intense, the amount of smoke that comes out of the stack increases, so you get more volume. And as you run that effects up arrow all the way to the top, and you get to the most laborious chuff that it'll make, that's when you get the maximum amount of smoke. Now that's presuming that you are on smoke high. So if you're on smoke medium or smoke low, and you're on the top end of your chuff intensity, the maximum amount of smoke will be less than it is on smoke high at the top end of the labored chuff. The same thing applies with diesels. You know, you go in, you hit aux 1, and you rev up your RPMs, you turn your smoke on to smoke high, hit your speed bar, and you hit your effects up button so that the locomotive is really laboring even while it's going slow. The stack is producing maximum amount of smoke. So, you know, when guys call up customer service and they say, oh, well, my engine doesn't smoke for nothing. Well, run the locomotive, and the first thing that you hear in the background is there's no intensity to their chuff, and it's like, oh, yeah, well, here, hit the speed bar and lay on this button and give it like 4 seconds, and they go, oh, my goodness, it's smoking like mad. Like, yeah, imagine that. If only you had read the manual.
Well, like you said, it's getting to the point where there are so many features that can be unlocked with the legacy system that you know, if you're used to running trains from 15 years ago, you don't even think that this stuff could possibly exist. And
I mean,
the fact
honestly, if you're running trains from 5 years ago, you don't even know the stuff exists, or
that's true.
You can't even fathom. You know, so let me wrap all of that up with one more statement. So
sure.
So now we've talked about how to manipulate the smoke volume on the locomotive. What's happening inside the train is as you make that locomotive labor more to simulate pulling a load, it consumes that fuel on a diesel and coal and water on a steam engine at different rates. So the more intense the chuffing, the more amount of smoke you have, the faster you consume coal and water. As those things are changing internally in the electronics, the other thing that's happening is your tower comm and your crew talk start to change with it. So you'll notice when you first put a locomotive on the track and play the crew talk, and you run it for about 2 or 3 hours, you play the crew talk again, the dialogue changes based upon fuel and water levels. And then you add in the sensor track that we've recently released and that the big boy comes with, and then that will actually bring another visual element to your legacy remote under that speed bar menu, which is in the lower left-hand corner. You'll have a fuel gauge and you'll have a water gauge for steam and fuel for diesel, and then that allows you to see what those fuel levels or consumable levels are in each locomotive each time it passes over that sensor track. And then, of course, with the big boy, the other visual representation is that depleting coal load. So there's a lot more going on inside your train besides having a black locomotive that has wheels, puffs smoke, makes a whistle sound, and pulls freight cars.
Yeah, it's incredible how far we are coming in such short periods of time. You know, and it really, you know, I think people miss this, and I've had this conversation with a lot of folks, is that, you know, whether people realize it or not, we are in a second golden age of O-gauge trains right now in terms of the technology advancing at a rate that it's never been done before. Sure.
And reliability, too. You know, I mean, technology is a wonderful thing, but, you know, it's not all that great when it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, there's some truth to that.
Just spend a rainy evening at home with no Wi-Fi. Let me know how that works out for you.
I'd rather not and say I did. How's that? And you're right. There's something to be said for, you know, there's a place for a post-war 671 and there's a place for a Vision Line big boy all inside this world of toy trains. And it just depends on what you're into. But that's the beautiful thing about the hobby. If you're into the nostalgia and the simplicity, there's something there for you. If you are into getting as close to the real thing, it's there for you as well. And like I said, that's a beautiful thing about the hobby that we live in.
Yeah, this is true.
So one of the things I want to bring you on and talk to you about here for a few minutes is to kind of put, I guess, the wrapping paper on the bow on this package that is the Vision Line Big Boy. It's in the States. It's getting ready to go out the door. Sounds like if Santa's sleigh can haul some tail, some folks might see these under the tree. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a really good chance some folks will see them under the tree. But if you remember my spiel both in April and October at York, when I gave the presentation in the booth, we've been promising people all year that these locomotives would be shipped by December of 2014. And I followed that up with, remember, there are 31 days in December. So just because it doesn't show up under everybody's tree 12/24 doesn't mean they won't receive them by 12/31.
Right. Well, and like I said, it sounds like things are getting ready to roll out the door in Concord. In terms of you guys are there.
Actually, they're not rolling out of the door in Concord. They're rolling out of the door out of port in Seattle.
Okay.
So Vision Big Boys are actually on a boat off the coast of Seattle because of the port congestion.
Okay.
And they should be in port. The boat should make port Monday if everything goes according to plan with the steamship company or steamship line. If it doesn't go according to plan, the boat will make port on Tuesday. And we have people that are in Seattle now with shipping labels in hand and packing lists ready to ship big boys out the minute they get released from customs.
Wow! So they're not even stopping. They're not even. It's do not pass go. Do not collect $200. It's coming to port and they're heading for dealers.
Exactly.
Very cool.
We have done everything everyone in the company has done everything within their power to get these things in people's hands as quickly as possible. Even so much so that they're not even coming to Concord. They're not being land bridged from the West Coast to the East Coast and make it to Concord and distribute from there. They are literally landing in port, going to dealers.
Wow. One of the things that was mentioned to us is that you guys had a very large team in China overseeing final production of these locomotives as the factory put them together. Why was it so important for you guys to have such a large team there? What are you guys looking for to ensure that these engines get delivered ready to go out of the box?
Well, as with all production lines that we run for all the products, there's a number of testing stations that are set up along the production line. So when the rear engine set is the subassembly for the rear engine set is built, it's tested without the motor to make sure it's free of binds and kinks in the drive line. When the front engine set is assembled, again, same thing. It's checked without the gears or without the worm gear in the equation to make sure that it is free rolling. It rolls down there's a piece of track that has a grade. It has to roll a certain distance freely without being touched. That says that, okay, there's no binds, there's no kinks, everything is free rolling, free moving. The tender, the coal load, the gearbox for the coal load in the tender, that is, that gearbox and its function and making sure that it operates smoothly and without binds and that there's no kinks in the gears and that the cherry switches are working properly. And, so there's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of moving parts, but for lack of a better word, there's a lot of moving parts that go on in there. You've got 4 smoke units. You've got a separate soundboard and a speaker in the boiler of the locomotive. You've got 2 speakers and a soundboard in the tender. All the lights, the LED lights, the on-off switches, the program switches, the class lamps in the rear directional light in the tender. and so on and so forth. And so as these things are going together, there's always the chance for a pinched wire, an assembly mistake, something. So instead of slapping everything together, getting it all the way down to the end of the assembly line, putting it on the track and testing it and saying, oh, well, it looks like it runs fine, only to find out that the work lights don't work, and missing it. So you've got all these different test stations set up along the line, and you've got Lionel employees that are actually standing there watching, checking, making sure that everything is fit and function and operation is 100%, because there's just so much to this particular locomotive in terms of, again, for lack of a better term, so many moving parts. And so this way, when it gets to the final testing phase where it's put on the track and it's run through all of its speed steps to make sure that you've got smooth operation and no hiccups in the operation of the locomotive, everything can be checked off: headlight, work lamp, smoke intensity, cab light, coal load. Coal load works in demo mode. It refills properly. Track IR is working. IR tether is working. Basically everything. Sound volume is at max on the pots. There's just a lot that goes into it. More so, think of it this way. A Vision Big Boy locomotive build is effectively building 3 separate Berkshires all in one build. You're building 3 engines into one. Between the coal load, the drive line, you've got 2 engine sets, you've got 2 soundboards, 4 smoke units. So, there's a lot that goes into it. And this is pretty much the flagship of the Vision line, is this Big Boy. This thing is the pinnacle of Vision feature set. It has to be right the first time. No questions. There's just no excuses. Either it's right the first time or we have failed, period.
So you guys are there physically on the line watching things go through these testing stations and just kind of keeping an eye on things as things come together in their final stages.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. We've had people there on site during sub-assembly builds. We've had people there on site during, just shooting the parts, checking the parts for, making sure that they do in fact meet the criteria for the bearings for the axles. The axles are the right diameter. The wheels are coming out straight. The wheels are being pressed onto the axles straight and not at an angle. There's, let me put it to you this way. In, maybe about the middle of January, when all of the exploded view parts diagrams are done for the Vision line Big Boy, jump on the service site and take a look at the exploded view part list. And when you see all 298 parts that comprise just the locomotive, and then another 197 to 220 parts that comprise the tender, yeah, there's a lot to it. A lot to it.
You don't even fathom that many parts going into a toy train, and it's just incredible to hear, how many pieces. So almost probably 425 plus pieces to make up one single locomotive is really incredible.
Yeah, and then you just take all of the mediums that are there. You've got die cast, you've got lost wax brass, you have photo etch, you have stamped parts, you have injection molded parts for some of the circuitry bracketry inside and the speaker baffles. You have electronic components that are sourced from the other manufacturers that make the speakers. You have all of the PCBs that are built by yet another vendor, that those have to have firmware programmed on them. They have to be tested for all of their functions. Then you factor into that equation a motor that came from yet another vendor. That motor we need to ensure that motor is within spec, and that when we couple the flywheel encoder to that motor and couple it to an RCMC and then to a soundboard and then to a smoke unit and on and on and on and on, the potential for things to go wrong on the production line are very high. So that's why we have our people there physically, and they were there. They would get there at 6 in the morning, and they'd be there till 8 o'clock at night, working the same crazy hours I work. Or that I shouldn't say I work. That a lot of us at Lionel work crazy hours. These guys are in these factories overseas, making sure that the product is right. Because at the end of the day, what we're all aiming for, obviously we want a good product to go to the customer, but what we really want is we want to be able to stand up in front of our audience, which is the O-Gauge community, and say, hey, we were a part of this. We are very proud of it. We have busted our humps on this for months, if not years on end, to make this a reality. We delivered it on time, and it meets the expectation or exceeds the expectation of the consumer. And that really is about aside from your paycheck that you get, that is the satisfaction that comes out of the tireless labor that goes into making these products.
Absolutely. And it's something, speaking from knowing you guys on a deeper level than most folks ever get to know you guys, you guys are when I'm home working on Notch 6 or doing stuff that's completely unrelated to work and is just, this is not a job for me. We're trading emails at 9 o'clock in the evening. I'm trading emails with marketing at 9:30 in the evening. I'm getting emails from you at 6:30 in the morning. People don't realize the hours that go into these engines, and it does have to bring you guys a sense of accomplishment to see such a high-end product reach the finish line, and that's got to feel good.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to ask you, before we start to wind this down and you get to send Christmas greetings to everybody, now that this project is done and knowing you guys, you're already on to the next big thing that we're going to see in 15, 16, somewhere down the road, but just stopping for a minute with this project, what's personally your favorite part about this locomotive? What makes this engine special for you?
What makes the Vision Line Big Boy special for me? I'd have to say the coal load. The coal load is pretty much the coolest feature, especially when you can, standing up in front of the audience at York in April and October, running that engine around and stopping it in front of the crowd and, holding down the brake button and watch the coal load deplete. And the joke that I would make was, this is like watching paint dry. And you'd get a chuckle out of the audience. But that look on their face when this locomotive starts consuming coal right before their eyes, that is the magic of Lionel that I see on all those customers' faces. That's the most special part of this locomotive. I mean, the blowdown is cool, the smoking whistle is cool, the independently controlled dual stacks are cool, the smoke shroud and how it functions is cool, and the work lights are neat as well. And I'd say, actually, I have two favorite things, the coal load and the wheel slippage sounds. The wheel slippage sounds are really sweet.
Yeah, they are.
Especially for guys that know what wheel slippage is, and, the quilling whistle, come on, let's face it, right? We've had quilling whistles for like 6 years. So we're all pretty much used to it, as awesome as it is. So it can't be a favorite anymore, at least not for me. So it's the coal load and it's the wheel slippage sounds. Those are the two coolest things about the Big Boy. Like, you can get rid of everything else. If I could get all of that into a 460, I think I'd be pretty stoked about it too.
That's a few years away still. We need to get circuit boards a little bit smaller still.
Yeah. Let's not go there.
No, let's 500 parts in a 460. The days are coming, my friend. Mark my words, and you guys are going to be on the front lines of it. As we kind of wrap this down, like I said, I don't want to keep you long because you are getting ready to go on a little hiatus here for a few weeks, a well-deserved hiatus. We're rolling into Christmas. Do you have plans for Christmas? I mean, what's your favorite part of this season?
My favorite part of this season?
Your favorite part.
Clearly, it's got to be the day after Christmas in customer service.
Stop lying to the folks.
You said favorite. I thought you said, what do you dread the most? I'm sorry. What's my favorite part about the season? Just spending time with the family. Just getting out of the office, not answering emails, not being on the phone with China when I get up in the morning before I go to bed at night. Not on the bench, fixing trains, just hanging out at home, being able to recharge and get reinvigorated for the year ahead. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Before we go here, I'm going to give you your own platform here for however long you need to send Christmas greetings to anybody. If there's anybody you'd like to say hello to, anybody you would like to call out for their knuckleheadedness, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, maybe I'm turning a new leaf, or maybe I'm just getting older, so I'm not going to call anybody out in particular. But, if there's something I've got to say, then let me say this. February will be the start of my 7th year at Lionel. It's been an awesome ride, and just about every day in that 7-year period, I get up at between 5 and 5:15 in the morning, and I look forward to getting to the office. And when I leave the office between 6 and 8 o'clock at night, I don't really feel as though I've worked in the true sense of working. I don't think I've dreaded going to work or felt as though I've been a slave to the machine for 10 or 12 or 13 hours. Maybe a few days that I could probably count on one hand, but in general, it's been 7 good years of not really having a job. They say if you really do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And like I said, I could probably, maybe two hands I could tell you the days I've had to work in the last 7 years in terms of, dreading having to go to work. But it's been a lot of fun. It's a wild ride. It's a passion I've had for a long time. I get paid to do what I really enjoy. And to me, that's a reward. And that can't be a reality without customers out there who are, buying the product and enjoying it. So Merry Christmas to everybody. And if you've bought a new Lionel product in the last year, a very special thank you from me. And I hope you guys all have a blessed and happy Christmas.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the whole reason we call this the Christmas Spectacular, Mike Reagan and the Night Before Christmas.
"'Twas the night before Christmas, and in the roundhouse, not an engine was stirring, not even a mouse. The tenders were filled with anthracite fare, in hopes that a Lionel Vision Line big boy soon would be there. The operators were nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of train sets danced in their heads. And Lenny in his kerchief, and I with my dog, little Rover, shut down our layouts for a long evening's layover. When up in the attic there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my chair to see what was the matter. Away to the attic I flew, with straight standing hairs, tore open the door, and walked up the stairs. The moonlight on the breast of a new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects I know, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a Lionel layout and 8 tiny reindeer. When the little old driver and a big boy, so nimble and quick, I knew in a moment that it must be St. Nick. More rapid than lightning, he fired his big boy. It whistled and smoked and sounded with joy. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the reindeer car at the top of the wall, now dash away all. Now we have a top-notch fireman from the North Pole called out, and a loco with enough tractive effort to carry us out. Santa left the big boy and boarded his sleigh. He handed down orders and gave me a wave. Then up to the housetops he merrily flew, with a sleigh full of trains and fast-track switches too. The reindeer were working their pachyderm vests, and Santa gushed with holiday zest. They were dressed all in fur from their heads to their feet, and their clothes were tarnished with ashes and sleet. Bundles of trains they slung on their backs, and they looked just like peddlers opening their packs. Santa with a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. His cheeks were like fire, his nose like a cherry. His goal this night was to make people merry. They spoke not a word and went straight to their work. They set up the layouts with not a quirk. By Santa laying his finger aside his nose, both up the chimneys they merrily rose. And once on their way, Santa yelled in his flight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Ladies and gentlemen, Merry Christmas from everybody at Notch 6. Merry Christmas from all your friends at Lionel. And Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.
This is Union Pacific 4004. Air is made. Brake test complete. Are we clear to pull? Over. Yes, 4004. You may proceed. Over. Very good. You got the green light. 4004 on.
The following has been a production of Notch 6 Media and is intended for private use only. This show may not be copied or redistributed without express written consent. This show copyright 2014, all rights reserved.